There's someone in your life right now, someone who exists in your orbit, perhaps closer than you realize, who carries a secret so heavy it's become part of their very essence. They love you with an intensity that frightens them, a depth that keeps them awake at 3 a.m, replaying conversations you've probably already forgotten. And this love lives in the silence between your interactions, in the space where words fail and hearts speak a language the mouth cannot translate. This person watches you in ways you haven't noticed, not in any intrusive sense, but in that ancient way souls recognize each other across crowded rooms and busy lives. They notice when you're tired before you say a word. They feel your energy shift when you walk into a space. They remember details about you that you mentioned once in passing. Because to them, everything about you matters. Everything you say becomes memorized scripture in the temple of their hidden devotion. Can you sense it now as these words wash over you? That tingling awareness, that sudden flash of a face or name that just appeared in your consciousness. That's not random. That's your intuition responding to truth. That's your soul acknowledging what your logical mind has been too busy or too guarded to recognize. This person has wanted to speak their truth to you 1,000 times, has rehearsed confessions in the shower, has typed and deleted messages until their fingers hurt, has stood on the edge of revelation only to retreat back into the safety of silence, because the fear of losing you entirely feels worse than never having you completely. Feel into this reality for a moment. Let it settle into your awareness like morning mist revealing shapes that were always there. Someone loves you, genuinely, deeply, without agenda or performance, and that love has been growing in the darkness like a seed underground, waiting for the exact right moment to break through the surface and bloom. The weight they carry isn't just about their feelings. It's about knowing you might not see them the way they see you. It's about the terror of changing a dynamic that currently allows them to be near you even if not with you in the way they dream about. It's about divine timing and soul contracts and all those invisible threads that connect hearts before brains can comprehend the magnitude of what's unfolding. Right now, in this very moment as you absorb these words, that person might be thinking about you, wondering if you feel anything at all, questioning whether the signs they dropped have been received or ignored, and the universe is orchestrating something profound between you both, something that's been building to a crescendo that you haven't even heard coming. This isn't about fantasy or wishful thinking. This is about energetic truth, about the way love announces itself in whispers before it roars, about how your spirit knows things your conscious awareness hasn't caught up to yet. And if your heart just skipped or your breath just caught, that's confirmation landing in your body like recognition, like remembrance, like your soul saying, yes, I know, I've felt it too even if I haven't named it. The silent admirer carries beauty and burden equally. The beauty of loving you exactly as you are, flaws celebrated as features, wounds understood as wisdom, quirks cherished as character, and the burden of keeping something so enormous contained within the fragile vessel of secrecy, wondering if revelation would bring unity or destruction, wondering if Friday will finally be the day when silence transforms into sound, when hiding becomes revealing, when the love living in shadows finally steps into your light. The universe doesn't speak in straightforward sentences. It communicates through synchronicity, through repeated patterns, through moments that make you pause and wonder if something bigger is orchestrating the details of your life. And lately, if you've been paying attention, the signs have been accumulating like evidence in a case you didn't know was being built. Think back over recent weeks and months. Have you kept running into someone in places that seem statistically improbable, those moments where you both laugh awkwardly and say, we have to stop meeting like this, except something in the laughter feels nervous, charged, like there's a conversation happening beneath the conversation? Have certain songs kept appearing everywhere you go, lyrics that speak directly to longing or unspoken feelings? And every time they play you think of the same person, that same face floating into your awareness like a persistent ghost who refuses to stay gone? These aren't coincidences. Coincidence is a language of people who haven't learned to read the alphabet of destiny yet, who haven't understood that when the cosmos wants your attention, it will tap your shoulder repeatedly until you finally turn around and acknowledge what's been standing behind you all along. Maybe you've noticed that when you're around this particular person, electronics act strange, lights flicker, phones behave oddly, because intense emotion creates electromagnetic shifts, because the energy between two people who are meant to collide creates interference patterns in the normal flow of reality. Perhaps you've experienced that uncanny phenomenon where you think about them and seconds later they text, or you dream about them and the next day they appear, or you feel unexplained warmth in your chest at random moments, and later discover they were thinking intensely about you at that exact time. These are not hallucinations or overthinking. These are energetic broadcasts. These are souls communicating through channels that bypass the limitations of physical distance and social protocol. Allow yourself to remember now, without judgment or dismissal, those moments when your intuition whispered something your logic immediately argued against. That feeling when they looked at you just a fraction too long. That electricity when your hands accidentally touched. That depth in their voice when they said your name like it meant something more than simple identification. You've been trained by society to doubt these subtle communications, to trust only what can be proven and measured. But love doesn't operate in the realm of scientific certainty. Love is quantum and mystical and utterly unreasonable in its methods of announcement. The angels assigned to your love story have been working overtime, arranging encounters, placing meaningful songs, orchestrating moments designed to crack open your awareness, and yet you explain them away, rationalize them, told yourself you're reading too much into things because acknowledging the truth would require vulnerability, would demand action, would mean stepping out of the comfortable numbness of unknowing into the terrifying potential of something real. Write it down if you feel called. List 3 unexplainable coincidences or repeated patterns involving someone who just entered your thoughts as you read this, because naming the pattern strips of deniability, because acknowledgement is a first step toward conscious participation in what's trying to unfold. Friday is significant not because of arbitrary calendar positioning, but because your vibration and their vibration and the collective cosmic current are reaching a point of convergence, a moment when the veil between hidden and revealed becomes gossamer thin, when breakthrough becomes not just possible but probable, when the signs stop being gentle suggestions and become undeniable declarations. You've been ignoring them not because you're oblivious, but because some part of you knows that once you truly see what's being shown, everything changes. The path you thought you were on reveals itself as merely the path that led you here, to this precipice, to this choice between continuing to pretend you don't notice or finally opening your eyes completely and witnessing the love that's been building in silence, waiting for you to be ready to receive it. Between the love that exists and the love that gets expressed lives a territory of obstacles, some visible and many invisible, operating like guardian dragons protecting treasure that can only be claimed when the seeker has proven themselves worthy not through perfection but through readiness. And understanding these blocks transforms frustration into compassion, transforms waiting into preparation. Your silent admirer carries wounds from previous attempts at love. Maybe they were rejected when they showed vulnerability before. Maybe they loved someone who weaponized their tenderness. Maybe they learned that being invisible felt safer than being seen and dismissed. And these scars don't make them weak. They make them cautious. They make them test the waters extensively before diving in, because their heart, though brave enough to love you, is also wise enough to protect itself from repeating patterns that nearly destroyed it. But the blocks aren't only theirs. You carry your own fortress walls, built brick by brick from disappointments and betrayals, from times you believed someone's words only to discover their actions told a different story, from relationships that taught you to expect less rather than hope for more, and these defenses that once served you now stand between you and the very thing your soul craves. Because the universe can't deliver love through closed doors, can't pour miracles into clenched fists, can't unite hearts that refuse to risk the vulnerability that connection demands. Divine timing plays its role too, operating on a clock that has nothing to do with your impatience or your readiness. Sometimes souls agree before incarnation to meet at specific junctures. Sometimes karmic lessons must be completed before new chapters can begin. Sometimes you both needed to become particular versions of yourselves before the love between you could flourish rather than flounder. And this waiting period that feels like punishment is actually incubation, actually preparation, actually the universe ensuring that when you finally come together, the foundation is solid enough to support the intensity of what you're meant to build. Fear forms perhaps the most insidious block of all. The fear that revealing love will destroy friendship. The fear that the fantasy exceeds a potential reality. The fear that timing is wrong or circumstances are complicated or society will judge or families will interfere. And fear is a master storyteller, spinning elaborate narratives about all the ways vulnerability leads to devastation, conveniently forgetting to mention that the greatest regrets in life belong not to those who tried and failed, but to those who never tried at all. There's also the block of worthiness, that quiet voice that whispers you're not enough or they're too good for you or you don't deserve this kind of love. the internalized shame that makes hiding feel like humility when it's actually just fear wearing a spiritual costume. Because if you truly knew your value, if you truly saw yourself through the eyes of the divine, you wouldn't question whether you're worthy of love. You'd know you're made of the same stardust as everything else in this cosmos, inherently deserving of connection, belonging, and devotion. These blocks aren't permanent structures. They're temporary barriers that can be dissolved through awareness, through healing, through the willingness to choose differently than you've chosen before. And Friday represents an energetic doorway when the combined momentum of both your healing and theirs reaches critical mass, when the universe says the preparation period is complete, when circumstances align in ways that remove excuses and create opportunity. Breathe into this understanding now. Let it soften the frustration you've been carrying about why this hasn't happened yet, because the delay wasn't denial, the silence was a rejection, the waiting wasn't wasted. It was necessary, it was purposeful, it was the exact amount of time required for both souls to arrive at the same destination, ready to actually walk through the door together rather than just peek at what's on the other side. Something has been working in the unseen realms, dismantling blocks brick by brick, preparing hearts to be open, arranging circumstances to be favorable, and Friday marks the moment when invisible work becomes visible manifestation, when the love living in silence finally finds its voice. Energy moves in cycles and currents, in waves that build and break according to cosmic rhythms most people never learn to read. But those who pay attention to these invisible patterns know that certain moments carry more potency than others. Certain doorways open that aren't always accessible. And this Friday, yes, the specific Friday approaching on your calendar, sits at the intersection of several converging forces that create what mystics call a threshold moment, a point where the ordinary becomes pregnant with possibility. There's nothing magical about the name Friday itself, but there's everything significant about the energetic coordinates this particular Friday occupies in the larger cosmic map. Planets align in configurations that influence human consciousness and behavior. Collective energy shifts in ways that make courage more accessible and fear less paralyzing. And the specific combination of celestial mechanics and earthly timing creates a window, temporary but powerful, when things that seemed impossible suddenly become probable. For your silent admirer, Friday represents deadline and opportunity simultaneously. Somewhere in their consciousness, perhaps not even fully articulated, they feel time running out on the current version of your relationship. They sense that continued silence risks permanent loss more than momentary rejection. They're being internally pressured by their own soul to finally act, finally speak, finally risk everything, because the alternative is watching you slip further away, or worse, watching someone else recognize your value while they remain frozen in the prison of their own fear. The number of days until Friday matters energetically because it creates a countdown, a building pressure, a sense of now or never that mobilizes action in ways endless time never could. When people believe they have forever to do something, they rarely do it. But when a deadline approaches, suddenly the impossible becomes mandatory. Suddenly courage finds a way through the walls fear built. Think of Friday as a portal opening, visible only to those whose hearts are tuned to the right frequency, accessible only to those whose intention and readiness match the vibration requirement. And this isn't about superstition or wishful thinking. This is about understanding that reality is far more fluid and responsive to consciousness than materialist science admits. That when enough factors align, your openness, their courage, universal timing, collective energy, manifestation accelerates. From eventual to imminent. You might be wondering what you're supposed to do with this information, how you're meant to prepare for a threshold you don't fully understand. And the answer isn't about forcing or manipulating or trying to control outcome. The answer is about becoming receptive, about clearing your own internal space, so that when love knocks you hear it, so that when opportunity presents you recognize it, so that when the moment arrives you're not so lost in old patterns that you miss the new path opening. Friday will bring a choice disguised as a moment. Something will happen. Someone will say something. A situation will present itself that feels simultaneously ordinary and significant. And in that moment, you'll have the option to respond from your past patterns or your present awareness, from your fear or your faith, from your walls or your willingness. The threshold works both ways. It's a doorway they must step through by finding their voice and speaking their truth. But it's also a doorway you must step through by being open to receiving something you perhaps stopped believing was possible, by not dismissing or deflecting when vulnerability appears, by recognizing sacred offering when it's extended. Feel into the energy of this coming Friday. Notice if something inside you tightens with anxiety or expands with anticipation, because your body already knows what your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Something shifts, something breaks open, something that's been building in silence finally finds expression. And whether that expression leads to union or clarity or simply the next chapter depends entirely on how both of you respond when the threshold appears. The angels aren't guaranteeing a fairy tale ending. They're guaranteeing opportunity, a moment of truth, a chance for what's been hidden be revealed, and what you do with that moment will determine whether the story becomes one of love actualized or love acknowledged, but ultimately unrealized. And that choice point arrives Friday. Ready or not, willing or resistant, the portal opens. Preparation for sacred moments doesn't involve elaborate rituals or complex strategies. It requires something far simpler yet infinitely more challenging. It demands that you become present, available, and genuinely open to receiving what you've been asking for, even if it arrives in packaging different from what you imagined. Between now and Friday, your primary work isn't external manipulation, but internal alignment. Creating space within yourself for new possibility by releasing the grip on old stories about how love should look or when it should arrive or who should deliver it. Start by getting honest with yourself about what you actually want. Not what you think you should want. Not what looks good on paper. Not what your family approves of or your friends understand. But what makes your soul say yes even when your logic protests. Because if you don't know what you truly desire, the universe can't conspire to deliver it. And if you're not honest about your readiness to receive love, you'll sabotage the very thing you claim to want when it finally shows up. Spend time in the next few days consciously releasing any specific attachment to who this person must be or exactly how this must unfold. Because attachment in specific form creates resistance to the divine plan. And sometimes the love that's meant for you was a face you didn't expect, emerges from a connection you underestimated, reveals itself in timing that seemed all wrong, until you look back and realize it was precisely right. Clear your energy field through whatever practice resonates with you. Meditation, time in nature, journaling, movement, sound, silence. Anything that helps you shed the accumulated debris of stress, doubt, cynicism, and protection that clouds your natural receptivity. Because you can't clearly receive signals when you're broadcasting static. Can't recognize truth when you're wrapped in layers of defense disguised as sophistication. Pay attention to your internal dialogue, especially the automatic responses that arise when you think about love or this person who just keeps appearing in your awareness. Notice if you immediately go to reasons why it won't work. Notice if you reflexively protect yourself with sarcasm or dismissal. Notice if fear disguises itself as realism and convinces you that guarding your heart is wisdom, when sometimes it's just cowardice. When Friday arrives and something happens, and something will happen, though it might not be dramatic, might not be obvious to anyone but you, practice pausing before reacting, taking one conscious breath between stimulus and response, because in that pause lives your power to choose differently than you've always chosen, to respond from presence rather than pattern, from possibility rather than protection. The 3 words that will change everything aren't necessarily the ones you expect. They might not be, "I love you," spoken by someone else, but "I am ready," spoken by you to yourself and the universe. They might be, "I choose love," when fear tempts you back to familiar numbness. They might be, "I trust this," when every fiber of your being wants to control outcome rather than surrender to process. Understand that windows of opportunity don't remain open indefinitely. Divine timing offers moments of perfect alignment, but doesn't force anyone through the door, doesn't override free will, doesn't guarantee that everyone recognizes sacred opportunity when it appears. And this Friday window, while powerful, is also temporary, which means what you do with it matters. How you show up matters, whether you choose courage or comfort matters. Some of you will experience direct confession, words finally spoken after months or years of silence, and your response in that moment will either open or close the path forward. Some of you will experience more subtle revelation, a look that lasts too long, a conversation that goes deeper than usual, an invitation that feels weighted with possibility, and your willingness to follow the thread without demanding it immediately become rope will determine what comes next. And some of you will experience internal shift rather than external event, a sudden knowing, a clarity about who this person is and what you need to do next, a recognition that downloads all at once like remembering something you always knew but forgot, and trusting that knowing enough to act on it becomes your threshold crossing. The mystery remains about exactly what unfolds after Friday, about whether love spoken returns to silence or blooms into something tangible, about whether this threshold leads to beginning or simply to clarity. But this much is certain. Something ends and something begins, something hidden becomes visible, something silent finds voice, and you'll never be able to return to the innocence of not knowing what you're about to discover. The question isn't whether love exists. You already know it does. You felt it in the signs, in the synchronicities, in that persistent presence of someone in your awareness. The question is whether you're brave enough to meet it when it finally stops hiding, whether you're open enough to receive in whatever form it takes, whether you're ready to stop being the person who wishes for love while simultaneously building walls against it. And after Friday, after the threshold moment passes and the choice is made and the window closes, there's something else waiting. Something about the 3 words that will either heal everything or change everything. But that revelation belongs to the next part of this story. The part you can only access by first moving through what's about to happen. So pay attention, stay open, and whatever you do, don't let fear convince you to look away. When love finally looks directly at you,